Do you guys use Zoom, by the way, or what do you use at IO?
We do. We use a Teams, Zoom. I think we're looking at GoToMeeting as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks again, Heidi, for joining me today. And, as I mentioned to you, the reason for the conversation is to help our customers, the community that we work with, HR professionals and everybody who's going through these times and adjusting through these times to support the remote employees working from home, give them some ideas and somebody with your experience. A lot of people are going to be really looking forward to hearing from you. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself if you want to introduce yourself.
Of course. Thanks, Marcus, for having me. I'm happy to help the Hoppier team. I have a really unique role. I work for Ottawa's economic development agency, Invest Ottawa, and Bayview Yards, and I'm actually the head of HR for Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards. But I have the pleasure and privilege of being able to work with companies like you who are basically growing their organizations, and I work with all of our programs. So I work with our accelerator companies, so those even in the pre-accelerator where they're starting their businesses and they may have an idea, they may be two-person founder team, straight through to our scale-up programming, which is companies that are often scaling, sometimes 50 million plus in revenue. So a lot of HR puzzles that I get to see and witness and really try to support our companies as they're navigating their journey towards success.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think that's one of the reasons that I was super excited to chat with you, because you work with so many different sizes of organizations. And I think that alone is going to give a lot of insight to people who will be checking this out. How has the transition to work from home been for you?
It's been really good. I think for me personally, I have young children, under 2, under 5. And so I think that's been the biggest challenge. I'm trying to embrace it. I was saying that I'm not apologizing, but I'm acknowledging. And so I acknowledge for our audience that with a 3 and a 5-year-old, they do like to make regular connects with me throughout the day as I'm trying to work. And so I think that that's been the toughest piece for my husband and I, who are both working in our executive level positions at home. The little ones are often wanting to connect with us. And I think that's been the biggest challenge. Other than that, I mean, I have an incredible team. I've got, we have incredible clients, and everybody's been really amazing about the adjustment we've all had to make. I think recognizing that everyone is going through this at the same time does, bring a bit enhanced empathy and understanding for things that don't always go as planned. I had to cancel a meeting yesterday with a client because my 3-year-old wasn't going to allow me to have that meeting. And he understood because he also has a 3-year-old, or he has 2 3-year-olds. So I think it's, there's an empathy there and an understanding that we haven't seen before. And I think that that's made it an easier transition for a lot of us. And I think everyone has unique family circumstances, and I think employers need to appreciate that. And there's this need for flexibility and understanding, and really truly understanding what everyone on your team needs to be thriving in their work at this stage in such an uncertain time.
For sure. And I mean, is working from home something that you were able to do before, or is this completely new for Invest Ottawa?
We've always valued flexibility in the workplace, and and that sort of resonates with a lot of our programming. And so, yes, we did have that opportunity to work from home when required. And some people, I think, work from home more frequently. I wasn't someone that worked from home a lot. I'm an extrovert. I like to connect with people. And I think that video obviously has been a huge, I would say it has helped with the transition, because we can see individuals. So I'm definitely one of those people that have their video on all the time, regardless of what I'm wearing or what my hair looks like. I think that connection with other individuals that you're trying to have a meeting with is really important. And so I've been able to transition to my role very easily working remotely. It's just having the children at home, having to kind of add teacher hat to my list of responsibilities. That I think has been the thing that I'm learning to navigate. The work piece has been pretty seamless. It's the other pieces. Pieces.
Yeah, I guess that's the piece that you're not really accustomed to dealing with while you're working, right? So adjustments. Not generally.
Yeah. I always say, my husband and I, we talk about life harmony instead of life balance. And right now everybody's life harmony is really commingled, because you've got work and home and kids and homework and just caring for one another. It's all sort of being done at the same time, and there's no really separation of that. So I think it's just everyone getting comfortable with that and doing the best that they can under the circumstances.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a point which I totally agree with, which is that understanding and empathy that everybody has right now. Even for me, when I'm talking with companies, I talk with various ages, and that every person has their own circumstance. And if they're late to the call, if they're need to cut the call short, like it's super important to be understanding right now, because there's just circumstances that we're all dealing with that are new to us. And it's I think what's been amazing is that there's been no problem with that empathy. Like everybody seems to have kind of adapted that and been super understanding. And I think it's really important during these times. And working from home, like for us, it was also something that was accepted and encouraged when needed. But for me personally, like yourself, like I love being in the office. I love being with the people, sharing the energy. Like we really thrive off energy off from each other, and especially in a startup sense, the energy that you gain from others really helps you stay motivated. So I think that's something that is difficult when you transition to work from home, but you have to find ways to still be able to do that. And
it's true. I think I've been really inspired, right? And I have these 3 themes that I kind of work towards, is kind of communication, connectedness, and community. And at the beginning of every day, that's kind of what I'm focused on in terms of helping our employee base, our client base, and just trying to make an impact, and pay it forward as best as I can. And so I feel inspired, and I think that is what's kept keeping me really uplifted and motivated to keep doing what I'm doing. And I certainly know as an organization, that is what our entire team is, highly productive and really working on continuing to support our clients so that we can all navigate through this together. We are all in this together. And so, we don't see that very often. And because we are all in it together, I think that's why we're seeing that shared sort of understanding and empathy. It's actually really nice. It's nice to see that.
Yeah,
that
totally.
Sense of community.
I was just about to say that sense of community, even with our customers reaching out and asking for guidance from other companies that we're working with, like we've never really had that before, where there's so much connectivity between all these companies that we're working with. And it's been amazing to watch. And, I have the privilege of getting to chat with a lot of the customers, and it's amazing to hear like some of the things that they're implementing, especially, in that initial transition when it happened. I saw everything turned on its head in about 3 or 4 days, where it was kind of, maybe we're going to be moving to work from home. So suddenly, we're moving to work from home, and companies had to adjust. Did you guys do anything in particular when you first moved to work from home, like for your team, or was it?
We did a lot of things. I mean, I'll pick 3. I think one of the things we did was we made sure that everyone was safe and that they were in a position where they could be successful at home. 100%, that was our priority, making sure the health and well-being of our team, that was our number 1 priority. And so making that transition and those decisions were pretty easy to make, and then making sure that they had what they need to be successful at home. And then again, recognizing everybody's unique situation, figuring out what that looked like, and helping to work with them to ensure they could be at their best when they could be at their best at work.
Yeah.
The second thing I think that we did as a leadership team is we ended up starting to have really regular daily stand-ups. So, we start our day together every morning, and that's been wonderful because we can connect and find out how we're all doing, but get a sense of what's going on in the organization. And that's been wonderful. And I would say the third thing, we've always been really innovative and creative with programs. And, from an HR perspective, and I know your clients who own the HR world will laugh. We've always had to be lean and mean with our finances because we don't just generally get huge budgets. And I think this has just further encouraged our team to be more innovative, more creative on what we could do to create that sense of community amongst our team, create that sense of connectedness. So we're doing things like virtual coffees to virtual social hours, from 5 to 7 on occasion. We have Friday lunches together. We have spirit days every week. We've got a lot of activity going on just to keep everybody connected to one another. It's all voluntary, of course, and people choose what they want to do and where. we have a great lunch and learn series that we had before that is seeing a really enhanced participation in terms of people coming to the table to actually deliver a lunch and learn for their colleagues, and those coming to actually enjoy some time with their colleagues. So I think there's a lot of things you can do, recognizing everyone's trying to be lean on budgets. There's still ways to be innovative and creative. And my big recommendation to any of our clients, and I would say to anybody that's listening to this, is find out what matters to your people, right? Mm-hmm. Find out how they want to connect, find out what they want to be connecting about, empower them to be part of that process. HR doesn't have to lead everything. They can be the catalyst and the champion. They can help make it happen, but empower your team to be part of the process and get involved. I certainly know the success we have had with our Lunch and Learn series is only driven because we've had so many amazing, talented members of our team step up to deliver those Lunch and Learns.
I think one point you made there is empowering your team to really step up and take initiative with finding new ways to connect with people is super important, because, in these times, I think people will look to HR for that guidance, but really there's so many different ideas that can be implemented. I can give one example from us is we set up this tool called Discord, which essentially acts like an active voice channel where you can essentially be in that channel and anybody can chat whenever they feel like it.
That's awesome.
And there's always a couple of us in it during the day, and it almost feels like you're with them in a room, because if somebody wants to chime in or just speak about something, you can bring up these topics, and it makes that availability of walking to somebody's desk still there. But, to your point, like, I think HR is faced with this challenge, but almost this opportunity to really be innovative. And I think that's, in a way, an exciting time for HR leaders, because when there are challenges, that means you can find new solutions. You can find new ways to approach ways to connect people together. And I mean, especially now when everybody's going through this, I think people are looking for these ways to do that. So, it's great to hear how you guys are approaching it. Would you say that there's a common approach like that you're seeing with companies to employee engagement right now? Is there something that you're seeing happening more frequently? One of the things that you mentioned, which was the virtual lunches and lunch and learns, that's something I've actually heard quite a bit about.
I think I've seen, if you look at themes and patterns across various companies, I think enhancing communication has been number one. Being as transparent as possible given the uncertain times and how things have been changing so quickly. But I think a lot of organizations are putting in a lot of effort to enhance their communication amongst their own teams, but across the organization. A lot of Ask Me Anything sessions have been happening across organizations, which I think are always well received by the team. I think a really important point to highlight is always making sure that those people get a chance to ask their question ahead of time, because not everyone is interested in singling themselves out and asking a question in a live webinar. But I echo that. I applaud those companies that are holding those sessions, because those are some tough sessions to kind of moderate. I've seen, I think, a lot of, all hands meetings, all staff meetings going virtual. And I think those meetings that we never thought would work virtually are working. And I think that's surprising a lot of people. So I do see some kind of work behaviors possibly changing as we transition, to a new normal after the pandemic, because I think that a lot of people are surprising themselves on how productive they can be, how their teams are still feeling connected and still able to have those team meetings. Yes, it's a bit different, and you have to have sort of different guiding principles. But the reality is, I think that enhanced communication and just people are looking for everyone to, to their leaders to be leading. And I think that, enhanced communication, that transparency, and just that guiding principle of, having folks lead the way they want to be led in terms of having the information that they need to have to be successful. I think those things are, again, just normal guiding principles. We're just seeing it enhanced.
Totally. And I think that's like in moments like this is when the values that a company has and an organization has really stand out and almost feel elevated, because you don't have that in-office connectivity or the same connectivity that you would in the office, where you can see each other interact all the time. Like now, a lot of these interactions and a lot of communication really gets, like you said, heightened. And I think people's values, companies' values are really standing out. And that's what I've seen in our organizations and with other companies that I've chatted with, is that those values that a company has are really coming out. And I think highlighting that is important as well. And I think, one of the things that I've seen as well as a common practice now is taking the time to really recognize individuals who are kind of showing those values.
Of course.
It's easy in the office to go over to somebody and congratulate them for doing a good job or saying thank you. Now when you're, whether you use Slack or you use a tool like that where you send an email, recognizing somebody almost feels like it feels a lot more powerful.
It's that virtual high five as opposed to the actual, high five, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I think with HR, like there's so many different areas that you can focus on now. I mean, with the connectivity, the transparency, the communication you mentioned, I think those are big areas. Do you think that there's there's an area in particular that HR should focus on, or is it more so just being there for your team? How do you think that evolves?
So I was with a bunch of HR peers just yesterday, and we were talking about the importance of self-care and self-care for ourselves, because a lot of HR practitioners are navigating a new way of working and helping to make sure that everyone else is healthy and safe. And I think self-care for HR leaders, I think, is really important right now, taking time for themselves to just, kind of look around, kind of be grateful, recognizing that they're doing the best that they can given the circumstances. Because I think, ultimately HR leaders need to be focused on the health and wellness of our people, and not necessarily, recognizing that a lot of our folks hopefully are now working remotely and are self-isolating themselves to protect themselves and their family, but it's more now the mental health and wellness. And so there's a lot of pros about working remotely, right? We've talked about some of them.
Yeah.
The ability to work remotely and, avoid commuting. It helps the environment. You can stay connected with your family more than you normally would have potentially. There's a lot of pros, but one of the biggest kind of downsides is that feeling of isolation. So while you and I think, are both extroverts and like to be in the office, and we've transitioned really well because we can talk with our peers and our colleagues on the video chat, not everyone's that comfortable doing that. And so I think, I'm always focused on, and I know my HR peers are as well, is who's not managing the transition as well, who needs a little bit extra TLC, recognizing your audience as a workforce, and knowing that, some people have unique family circumstances where they may be living alone. And what does that look like for them? What does this situation look like for them, and how are they managing? So I would say, self-care for the HR leader is really important, because you have to essentially help take care of everyone else. If you're not at your best, you're not going to be able to identify that other people are at their best. So I would say twofold. The focus should be about making sure your health and wellness is strong and solid. And if you're struggling, reach out and talk to someone and get support. And then also, help your leaders identify the various transitions, the various, personality changes potentially, or even productivity changes to help identify where some people may be struggling. Because the reality is that, everyone has a very unique situation. One size does not fit all. And I think it even starts, I was talking to a subject matter expert in this area, and they said, even just saying, Marcus, how are you doing? How are you really doing with working remotely? How's your family circumstances affecting your ability to work? Are you feeling any pressure in any specific area? Like, actually being really curious right now. We've always, as leaders, needed to have good listening skills and two-way discussions, now more than ever, right? Really being curious and understanding your employees' unique circumstances, I think, is really important. And then again, it helps you create that safe environment so that if at some point Marcus isn't uncomfortable, is struggling, you're going to be willing to reach out to me and have that discussion, right? Because I've opened that door.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And, one of the things that I'm seeing as well is that people are being a lot more, inquisitive about that sort of thing. I think people are getting, or at least my colleagues, it feels like we're getting closer together and really getting to learn about each other a lot more, because you feel, again, it goes back to that community. You feel like you're there almost as a family, right? And you want to support each other. I think maybe one of the challenging things can be, how do you navigate approaching members who might be struggling a little bit, or how would you say to approach somebody who may need that extra help? Do you reach out to them individually, or do you suggest ways for them to maybe feel more productive or find ways to be more productive? How would you go about approaching that?
It's a really great question. I was asking this question to the subject matter expert I was speaking to just a few days ago. And, you know, I think what I would do personally is I think it would be depending on who the individual is, finding out who maybe has the best relationship with that individual. It may be HR, it may be their manager, it may be a colleague, trying to ensure that they feel as safe as possible when someone does reach out to them. And really trying to ensure they have the tools and resources that they need so that at their level of comfort that they can hopefully reach out and get support. I think the other thing too is, as an organization, you can be very broad in terms of making sure that all employees have access to tools and resources, crisis lines that are available 24/7, information online, resources that are available so that just in case, because sometimes you will be able to identify when someone is challenged and struggling, and there are many other times when you wouldn't be able to. And that person may need the resources and the information just as much. So I would say, you know, take a step back and absolutely look out for those individuals that are demonstrating changes potentially in their behavior and their personalities, and help give them, you know, tools and resources as soon as possible. But I would also say more broadly, make sure that's readily available for everyone, because someone might not be exhibiting changes, but still need the support. And I think that's really important. And the reality is, Marcus, you know, these are times that a lot of us haven't seen before, uncharted territory, a lot of unknowns. It's a stressful time with that uncertainty. And I think people's stress levels generally are probably more heightened than normal. And so mental health and wellness is really important. I also think that, you know, I've been seeing a lot of great stuff online about just, again, when I said at the top of the meeting, I'm not apologizing anymore for my children because I'm very proud of them, but I'm acknowledging that there's likelihood that we may get an interruption. And I think that language is important. It is about also demonstrating that, you know, this is not the normal way that we've all been working before. This is new. And I think everyone's got to, you know, give themselves a bit of a break and just recognize that, you know, do the best that you can given your circumstances. Remember to always communicate with your leader what you need, what would make it more successful for you. Make sure that, you know, you have open dialogue with your leader. I think that's essential. And I think as HR leaders, we need to just be checking in to make sure those discussions are happening. And that, you know, we're also, I think, alternating how we're communicating with our folks. Because if you and I are always texting one another, maybe once in a while I should pick up the video call and ping you that way, or I should pick up the phone and call you. And I think we naturally as humans get very comfortable with the way that we communicate with one another. But in this time, we need to switch it up because we're not seeing each other face to face live. And so I do encourage people to kind of go outside their comfort zones and get off Slack once in a while, or off Teams, or whatever you use, and actually pick up the phone and have a conversation so you can hear the person's voice, or, you know, jump on a video call. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the different forms of communication. It just made me think about how we're communicating in our team as well. And, you know, again, I think I would go back to that one tool that we use. It's helped with having that voice channel where everybody can jump in the channel and just chat with each other. We've gotten comfortable with that in a sense, but every time I hop on a call with a colleague on a video call, it's always refreshing to do that and actually get to see the face. So I think having these different channels of communication is super important.
I think it's also good to keep it fresh, right? So people do get comfortable, and there's consistency kind of, you know, sets in. I'm a big believer in keeping things fresh and you know, trying different things so that you and your team may do this for a couple of weeks and decide, you know what, let's do something different. Let's explore a different tool, a different resource. And that does keep things fresh and keeps people you know, kind of engaged and curious. And you may see, you know, when you see a down kind of decline in people participating, that's when you know you need to keep, you know, do something different to get people back onto that channel. I always call it the kind of the pizza lunch. You know, when you host pizza every Friday and everybody comes the first 3 weeks, and then you start seeing that decline in people actually coming to get pizza, or they take their pizza and they go back to their desk, that's when you know you got to switch it up. because your initial goal wasn't necessarily just to feed your people and give them pizza. It was actually to bring your community together. Yeah. And so you can always kind of pay attention to kind of when you start seeing that decline, do something to keep it fresh, have a specific theme where people come to that channel, and, with a topic, and it might be like, come with your best recommendations for podcasts, movies, or books, or something where you can kind of generate some sharing. And again, you always want to recognize that everyone's going to be comfortable sharing in a different way. So, still give those people who aren't comfortable sharing live an opportunity to send you all the recommendations so you can kind of, share with your team on their behalf.
Totally. I think one of the things that I've been trying to do is when I'm having conversations with my peers, and you mentioned the daily stand-ups and chats like that, if you do it over multiple weeks, the participation might start decreasing because it just becomes that thing that you have to do. Is one of the things that I've been doing is trying to change the time of day when I'm having those stand-ups, because excellent. In the morning you might be feeling in some type of way, and then in the afternoon there's different things that you're working on, and different challenges or obstacles or exciting news, that you might have to share. So I found that having these conversations at different times in the day is really great for catching people in moments where the emotions are up or down, and it's really just it's a different time than just having it every single time.
It also accommodates people's unique circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe they have young kids and they need to take time to feed them in the noon hour, and they can jump on a lunch call. And so I love that idea about changing the timeframes of when you're holding meetings, because it helps to be more accommodating and inclusive to everybody on your team, so they can join in at different times and work that with their schedule. So I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, for sure. One thing you mentioned as well, which I think is important, is these different ways that you can innovate in these times without necessarily spending more money. Because of course, right now, I think there is, the concern around the economy and everything. And it's important for companies to know that you don't necessarily have to spend more money on tools or on different ways to innovate in these times, like that you are able to do that with some of the practices that you've, recommended here. Mm-hmm. Do you find, at least from what you're seeing in other organizations, are companies or are HR teams now working more closely with finance? Is that something that is happening, or would you say that it's as normal, continuing in the same way? Do you find yourself?
Well, I would hope that HR and finance always had a great kind of cousin relationship, or even a BFF relationship. I think that those two functions, you generally work, pretty well together and should work really well together. I would say that I haven't seen any increase in that. I see with the organizations that I know, they have really good relationships with their peers on the finance side, and, solid communication back and forth. I've, again, when I made the comment earlier about HR having to generally be innovative and creative, when you look at a budget for an organization, HR generally doesn't have the biggest budget. It goes to, sales and marketing, because it's about, especially if you're in the private sector, it is about generating revenue, and growth. HR is, often looked at as an expense, which it should be the reverse. It should be an investment, because you're investing in your people. Sure. When you're investing in your human resources team. And I definitely think that when we get into circumstances and situations like we're in now, organizations recognize that more and more, Yeah. that their people are their most important assets, and that it goes away from being just theory and it actually goes into practice. And, if every organization actually took a moment just to step back and recognize the absolute brilliance that their team is doing, like in terms of how they've transitioned to working remotely, how they're managing with their unique family circumstances, how they're still being able to thrive the best they can in work, and that you're still being able to deliver your service to your client or deliver that product or innovate in whatever capacity that you are. It does give you time to take stock, to go, wow, my team is world-class, doing amazing work. I certainly do. I'm inspired by our team every day, by the work that they do to contribute to our community, the work that they're doing to support our clients and helping them continue to grow their businesses. And I try to take stock of that and be grateful for those moments where you can take a step back and go, wow, what we're doing is really amazing given the circumstances around us. And I think, I'm not trying to be I generally am glass half full, But I think we often are losing sight of those moments to kind of look around and, as you said before, celebrate those successes, those wins. They're a bit different maybe than they were a handful of weeks ago, but I think taking time to recognize people's efforts, as well as just taking the time to recognize that your organization was able to transition as quickly as they had, that is something to celebrate. That is something to celebrate.
I think that's extremely well said, and I couldn't agree more. I think, now more than ever, there is those two sides where you can look at things half full or half empty, and there are a lot of things to be grateful about. And for myself, can't be more proud of the people that I'm working with, and I have never felt this inspired by the people I work with, because it's pushing me to work harder, to be more connected, seeing how much they've adjusted and how well they've adjusted. And I totally agree with you. Taking the time to step back and really appreciate that for one of your colleagues, your manager, or just the entire team itself. What a lot of organizations have been able to do is pretty outstanding. So,
and one of the things we talked about earlier was, and employee recognition is incredibly important, and you can have some, amazing programs in place, and you might not have many programs in place, but the reality is most employees would be incredibly satisfied with just a thank you, or just a simple recognition, like you said, via email or via Teams, or better yet, via video call or through a phone call, just saying, you know what, Marcus, I really appreciate how well you transitioned. I really appreciate your energy, the spirit that you're bringing to the team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, every leader could take a pause to say, can I reach out to my team by the end of day Friday, which is tomorrow, and basically just give a little thank you to our team in no matter, what kind of area of focus they're in. I think that would go a long way. That further kind of perks people up and motivates them to continue to put forth their efforts.
Totally.
And again, that's something really easy to do that any leader could do right now. And I'm gonna take that challenge and do it myself.
Me too. Heidi, I want to be conscious of your time. I know you have another call in a few minutes here, but I really appreciate all the insights you shared with me and with everybody else who's going to be listening and reading on this. It's incredible what's happening right now, and in some ways I think there are things you have to look on to be grateful about and be positive about in these times. And I know a lot of people will really appreciate hearing from you. So thanks again so much, Heidi, for sharing with us today.
Well, it was a pleasure to be here, and I wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good afternoon.
Take care, Heidi.
Bye.
Bye.